Hello everybody, Brett here, bringing you back for some more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action on my channel Good Talk Gaming. Thank you for joining me. Today I decided to do a quick battle, and you'll see here I'm playing as Clan Angren, and I'm going to be facing off against the Beastman. So let's go ahead and put it in slow-mo, and I want to do something different today. I want to go into the enemy army's composition before we go into ours, and I think that'll make a lot more sense as we get into this battle. So the Beastmen in general are excellent right now in the meta. A lot of pro players like to play them. They're a micro heavy faction, but against the Dwarves, micro is not needed. All you need is the myriad armor piercing options that the Beastmen possess. An entire front line here of Bestigors is to be expected. They're heavily armored with 95 armor, it's very good. Heavy armor piercing damage on their massive 40 weapon strength. They also stand in a bit of a loose formation, so taking missile fire, it's a little harder to burst them down. An excellent choice. I think they're 1,000 gold apiece, so you'll see here an investment of 5,000 gold. Heavy duty armor piercing will tear up any Dwarven front line that isn't made up of iron breakers or hammerers. Anything below that will get crushed by the Bestigors. Here's a unit you don't see a lot except in the Dwarven matchup. They're a large unit, and they're the cygor herds. They have great armor piercing damage, high weapon strength of 52 as well, and they're pretty fast. They can run circles around dwarves, and they're relatively cheap, but their frenzy and their low leadership is what causes people not to take them in most matchups. But their mass is pretty solid, and our opponent took 2 of them, and you'll see here one of them is deployed off into the trees. Not quite hidden. We were barely able to see them with our line of sight there. And this other group here is going to be high and tight with the army. Our opponent also decided to take 1 cygor chariot. Chariots are good against dwarves no matter what faction you're playing with. Once again, more armor piercing, more anti-infantry. Dwarven rosters are entirely made up of infantry, and armored infantry at that, so the cygors will always find a home. If properly microed, they'll do a ton of damage. Not too much else to be said about that. Once again, cygors there, but there are some more units that are Vanguard deployed. We have some Centaurs with throwing axes. They were Vanguard deployed. They're excellent. Once again, ranged, armor piercing. In a pinch, you can throw them into melee against some lower tier Dwarven units like, let's say, miners. But I'm going to be focusing them down quite quickly. I do see the danger of them on the battlefield as the sole skirmisher unit that the Beastman player has brought. Now, directly behind my lines here are these Chaos Warhounds with poison. Wasn't very scared of them. My backline is well protected by Slayers and Miners, and for the moment, our opponent has forgotten to micro them, so I'm keeping an eye on them. I also have line of sight, I do believe at this point, of the Chaos Warhounds with poison all the way in that corner. So he was expecting perhaps for me to deploy in this low ground here, and then he was going to envelop me, harass my backline with these 2 Chaos Warhounds with poison, perhaps get up in my face with the throwing axes. All the while, the centerpiece of this army, the Eye of Morsleep, the Regiment of Renowned Cygor, would be throwing boulders my way. So let's see if we can pause it and get into his special ability here. It's the best way to do this. Can we do it? We cannot do it. Okay, I give up. But his special ability, it's a lockdown ability. It's very similar to a net or a Prey of Anathrama. It locks a unit in place, which is pretty valuable if you're going to attempt to burst them down with, let's say, some Centaurs with throwing axes, or if you just want to make sure they don't move while your cygor or cygors take massive armor piercing shots at them with a lot of splash damage. So the Regiment of Renown, in addition to having just beefier stats, he also has magic resistance. He does do magic damage himself, and yeah, that increased all around good stats makes him better in melee when the time comes for him to run out of ammunition and fight. And to support that choice, very good against dwarves. And this is honestly the build I was expecting. So The build is heavy armor piercing, lots of chariots. I expected, honestly, maybe a few more cygors with throwing axes, so I was ready for that. Now I'll explain why in a second. But this is the lord that I was expecting. Malagar the Dark Omen. Stripped down completely with just the ability to regen his Winds of Magic. Let's see if we can pause it and we can click on him. We cannot. Kind of unbelievable that we cannot do that. But he's stripped down so that he regens his Winds of Magic and he can summon cygors. So over a long game, him getting his maximum Winds of Magic recharge rate up, I would expect to see him summon 2, potentially 3 cygors. And even a summoned cygor degrading over time will still get anywhere between 50 to even as many as 100 kills with its siege damage before it does disintegrate. And with my ranged units in my army, I'm taking careful shots at the cygor with throwing axes, and I'm doing so with my Goblobber, lowering their leadership. The Goblobber is very accurate as a Regiment of Renown, ranked up, rank 9 artillery piece, and it's going to rout those cygors quite easily. You'll see here down to 28 models. I also took a cannon, expecting some sort of cygor shenanigans. You definitely want a cannon. They are very accurate, and they're very good at staggering large models. They'll interrupt a lot of throws. If you watch them hit cygors over and over again, they'll occasionally stop their animation and force them to stop firing. So, in a broader sense, I want to kind of go over why I chose this army, and there's a lot of things here that are basically designed to counter the counter to the dwarves. So this army is armor piercing, and they get a lot of value against dwarves that like to camp by summoning, at any given time having 2 to 3 cygors on the field and just bombing you from afar. The only way to deal with that normally is to have enough cannons on the field to burst down the cygors, but when you do that, you leave yourself open to all of this harassment shenanigans from the armor piercing units, and your front line will be so weak that 5 Bestigors will be more than capable of tearing through your front line. So to counter that, right, expecting more cygors, I brought the very cheap 500 gold Rangers. They have a little bit of armor, but they are shielded. That's the important part. And they're skirmishing. If they have to skirmish 1v1 versus cygors with throwing axes, they'll win. And if you give them just a little support with, let's say, some miners here on the flanks, they're not going to be able to get in and beat them 1v1 in melee either. So I brought 4 of them, and they ended up being a good choice this game. The Beastmen are a low armor faction for the most part, but when they do have armor, they're not shielded. So at the very least, the Rangers will be effective, but not perhaps as effective as, let's say, Thunderers. But they're very cheap. Their cheapness makes up for the fact that they do not have the best armor-piercing values. You'll see here I put them in spaghetti lines. All of my units are in spaghetti lines, not wanting to take a very square formation here. Let's say this formation was something like this shaped. A cygor boulder slammed right into the middle. It could kill 15 models in one shot, and we certainly do not want that to happen. 2 units of Slayers in the backfield with 2 units of Miners to support them. Slayers are going to be good against almost everything on the Beastman roster. If they can get into cygors, they'll kill them. If they can get into the chariots, they'll stop them and kill them. Centaurs don't stand a chance, cygors rather. They're just an all-around great unit. I don't have the Regiment of Renown, the Dragonback Slayers, and they would have been good here, but they're just very expensive. Their slowing aura is great at keeping skirmisher units at bay or keeping units from running away from you. At this point, the Eye of Morsleep is looking to advance, and he's going to be doing that under cannon fire. And meanwhile, I'm looking for good targets for the Goblobber. My front line, just basic dwarf warriors. I wanted some shielded units in the front line just in case he went very, very heavy, very cheesy with the cygors with throwing axes. They would at least be able to sit there and take the fire while the rest of my army did work. And my very front line are a unit of Iron Breakers. Not the Norgumlings. I wanted something very sturdy when mixed in with with my lord here, Belegar Ironhammer himself. But the added expense of the Norgamling's Ironbreakers was something this build just couldn't afford. We needed to make sure we had enough things to cover our front line. But here's kind of the crux of the build. So Belegar Ironhammer is just a very durable lord choice. He even has silver shields with his 120 armor. And I took the Oath Stone, the Mighty Oath Stone, giving 27 melee defense and expert charge defense in a pretty decent area around him. And we'll move him in closer to our melee units when the fighting starts. Also took the Ancestors. So this is where the build really comes together and starts to make more sense. Throny Ironbrow, as well as Draemar Hammerfist, these ethereal dwarf hero units are unique to Clan Angren. The Beastmen, almost all of their damage is going to be physical because they're going to opt to take all of this armor piercing damage, and they're going to forsake taking any kind of heavy magic damage, which is really the only thing that can burst down these ethereal units. That's where my thought process was. It's a counter to the counter, so to speak. To get the most effectiveness out of Malagor, you're not going to take the magic that he would otherwise take against any other faction that doesn't have their passive missile resistance. So, knowing that, getting these units on the field is excellent. They're a bit more expensive than their standard counterparts, the Runesmith and the Engineer, but what's unique to these guys is they cause terror. So massive physical resistance, they're unbreakable, and they cause terror. Beastmen units, once they lose their, let's see, I think it's called Bestial Rage, they lose their immune to psychology, Primal Fury, so kind of a synonym there. But they get charge, bonus, melee attack, speed, immune to psychology. But once you get them down below half HP, they're going to lose that. And terror is going to kick in, and you're going to be able to rout even a front line of Vestigors. And with Runes of Wrath and Ruin, which is what I took on Throny Ironbrow, as well as his other two runes, Oath and Steel and Rune of Negation, to buff up my front line. And in a turtle circumstance, a circumstance where most of my units get picked off and I'm forced to kind of bring all of my units together in a little death ball, is very strong to have that increased armor, increased damage resistance, as well as a unit you almost never see, the Engineer. And I'm almost done, guys, if you're getting a little bored with this breakdown. But I thought it was important, and my build is almost more important than the battle itself, I felt. I took this Engineer, stripped down, with only 2 abilities. I have the Fiery Ring, which is great against low-armored, clumped up high model count Beastman units. Not going to be as great against the Vestigors, but it'll do fine. And I also took, here we go, Entrenchment. So Entrenchment gives armor-piercing missile damage of 40%. So that's huge when you put that on something like a cannon, and I believe I will at some point here. But it's also very good for its pure physical resistance. So let's say you have a unit like these dwarves here, and they're going to be in the pits fighting against all of these very scary armor-piercing units, and they're very cheap. You give them plus 22% physical resistance. Now, granted, they won't be able to move, but you don't really want to move them anyway. They're already standing and fighting. You add that to a 22% physical resistance and 30 armor from the Runesmith here, and all of a sudden you've got some nearly immortal dwarf warrior units guarding your flank. Now, these Chaos Warhounds are going to be looking to get into the action, and we're going to go ahead and speed this up. There's no real home for these guys. We don't have any vulnerable units. He was smart to find a pocket here, but I wanted him to come in. At this point, I'm going to turn the Rangers around, engage them in melee, let the Slayers crush them. Honestly, the Slayers are probably the worst units to fight them, because they will trade and get some damage. But you don't have to do very much damage to a Warhound unit to break it off the battlefield. I noticed he was a little lax with his micro in getting these Warhounds into the fight. He was going to scoot them around the sides, but I used my miners to screen for this unit of Rangers, and I was able to force him to take a few shots through the trees, so we missed a few. But then they were forced to kind of come around here, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. He would have been better just pulling them back and waiting for his main line. But we're going to skirmish them off. We're going to send one unit of Slayers. We'll pull another one back. And we're going to chase these warhounds off the battlefield. Once again, using the miners to screen for these rangers. Also using my artillery here to get these guys out. The good thing about the Goblobber is it has a leadership debuff that it applies to the units that it does hit. And against a low leadership faction like the Beastmen, that can be excellent. The Iron Breakers here are an excellent choice for the Eye of Morsleeve. You'll see here I've got them down to maybe 60% HP, but they're such an expensive unit, the Iron Breakers are, that any value you get by killing them, every boulder that kills an Iron Breaker is huge. But the Iron Breakers are such stalwart units that not every shot, even ones that hit squarely, will kill a model. Sometimes they'll all just get right back up after being hit square. And you'll see here I used entrenchment to give them physical resistance. They're already getting a little bit of lag here, sorry about that, but they're already getting resistance from the Eye of Morsleeve's damage with their natural magic resistance. So still up to 64 models. They are taking the business. I've got them pulled back as far as I can and then still be able to reliably defend the artillery. Now, in a lot of battles, you're going to want to spread your army out more than this, and you're certainly not going to want to put your front line right in front of your artillery like this. But you can only do that with a unit that has charge defense against all, which the Iron Breakers do. So any other units would be able to simply just, punch through eventually, but the Iron Breakers are going to stop any charge that affects them. So I felt fairly safe in keeping my artillery in the center of my formation the way I did. Plus, I really needed to maximize my range so that I could make sure that I'm hitting the Eye of Morsleeve. And you'll see here I've got him down to 50% HP. Here's that second cygor. It's degenerating on its own. It's already down to nearly 50% HP. And it's only got 12 kills. Here we go, some charges coming in from the flanks. And I'm going to be adjusting my formation to meet the charge. Rune of Wrath and Ruin going off on these Bestigors. And Belegar Ironhammer and my heroes are going to be plugging these gaps in between my formation. We're finally going to get these Centaurs off the battlefield here with a little bit of skirmishing from the Rangers. There goes Rune of Oath and Steel and Rune of Negation. Going to be holding down my front line, giving them lots of resistance here. Yeah, the two Cygors just throwing away. This one's going to die soon. Belegar's getting in there with the Mighty Oathstone, giving melee defense to the units nearby. And we're going to rout off these Bestigors. Once they reach around the 50% HP mark, they're going to be terrified, and they're going to rout. They're going to lose their primal fury, and they're going to be even more susceptible to routing after that, because the terror is going to be effective 100% of the time. Another Cygor gets summoned, and you can see that's what you want to do with Malagor. Now he's coming into melee range. See, I'm getting a few satchel charges thrown off with these Iron Breakers. And we're going to chase, but we're not going to chase that much. These units all have superior speed to the Dwarves. We've hurt them. We've routed most of their army, taken a lot of the HP off of their units. Another Rune of Wrath and Ruin going off in the Bestigors. The idea is to get them all below 50% HP, so that they're just more susceptible to the terror caused by my two ethereal units. So now Belegar getting into battle with Malagor. Battle of the two Gors, Gar and Gore. Now, Belegar does have, I keep calling him Belegar. Belegar does have an item that you can take that gives him huge, I want to say it's his, well, he has two items also. He has his hammer, which is his weapon, gives him increased melee attack and weapon strength. And he also has another ability, I think it's called Oath of Vengeance, which gives him huge armor piercing and weapon strength. So if you find him in a 1v1 versus another lord and they're not suspecting it, he can do a ton of damage. So into this blob here, we're going to be getting fire from the Goblobber, who is almost out of ammunition. The cannon has been shooting this entire time at the Eye of Morsleeve, and it's nearly dead. The cygor is degenerating, and our slayers on the flanks here were able to catch and clean up all of these chariots, all of these gores, the razor gores. This one's coming back in for a charge. Nope, they're all going to break off, they're all going to shatter. Once we crush the leadership, that was all she wrote. And just having a terror-causing unit on the Dwarven line is something that most players don't expect. And it's kind of the hidden strength of this build. So a long introduction, but a short battle. But this is for all you guys out there who love playing as the dwarves, but hate being kited to death by Beastman armies filled with cygors or cygors, or just hate having your front lines run over by bestigor units. I found this build was very effective and really not that hard to pilot. You know, it's a simple front line. There were a few things I did during the battle that perhaps got me more effectiveness, and one of those things was when the front lines were deployed, I originally had them far enough out that my artillery wouldn't be in danger from an infantry battle, but when I noticed that my guess was right, that I would be facing cygors, I pulled my front line back, forcing them to come closer and within the range of my cannons. So something like that, you have to know the game, you have to make a few tweaks here and there, but in the hands of even a not so experienced player, this build is definitely a good one versus the very meta build of the Beastman player here. So thank you to my opponent, Man Ty. I'm going to say Ty. And it was a good game. And for those of you out there who are watching this, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, hit the like button. That lets me know that I'm doing a good job. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching my Total War Warhammer videos and you like them, please go ahead and subscribe and let me know that you subscribed in the comments section. That way I can talk to you and I'll know who's part of my small community, and maybe we can play some games together. Alright guys, without any further ado, thank you again for watching and have a great day.